So we're joined today by Colton Prail. He's the CTV Ottawa correspondent, and we're glad to have him here. Colton, thanks so much for making yourself available this afternoon. We appreciate it.
Anytime.
Lots going on. I'm not even sure where to start. We had an economic update from Christopher Freeland, but before we get to that, let's talk about Jagmeet Singh. So he gets a meeting with Justin Trudeau today. Again, I don't know, to warn him that unless the Liberals come up with this March 1st deadline to introduce pharmacare, he's going to, I don't know what, go home. He's going to be upset. What happened at this meeting?
He's going to take his ball and leave.
And
that's
go
exactly
home. Okay.
Yeah, he says he's going to break the supply and confidence agreement, which really that's the balance of power in Ottawa right now. Look, it doesn't mean we're going to the polls right away, but it certainly changes the scenario. If they don't get a pharmacare deal done, if they don't have legislation introduced by this deadline, Jagmeet Singh says he's going to break that agreement. And what that means is that the protection the Liberals have right now, holding off an election all the way to 2025, is suddenly gone. Suddenly they're going to have to go bill by bill. And the Conservatives have been introducing a number of confidence motions. In the past, the NDP has always backed the Liberals. We can't guarantee they're going to do that. Doesn't mean that they won't, but we can't guarantee it anymore, and that's a significant change.
Okay, but at the end of the day, you keep hearing, I'm sure you've heard the same thing, the NDP doesn't want an election, doesn't want to force an election, so what's the win here for the NDP?
It's about political posturing. Like right now, there's two ways that the NDP go into the election. They either go into an election tied to the Liberals, and you have to ride that out through the election on the premise that this coalition will continue after 2025 or after that next election, and they're going to use the power that they have, and this is really the most power they've had in a long time, to continue pushing their agenda. That's option one. Option two is you are going to an election and you have to immediately divest from the Liberals. You need a breakup moment where you show that you are also an alternative to Justin Trudeau. So much of what has been successful for Pierre Poilievre has been that he's not Trudeau. He's not the guy you're tired of after 8 years, 9 years coming up now. And more than that, he's offering different ideas. Jagmeet Singh could be that guy too. You know, he is also an opposition leader, but he hasn't been able to do that yet. He hasn't been able to differentiate himself. This could be an issue. This could be a topic where he does that, where he really takes a stand, picks a fight with the feds, and draws a line in the sand. And that would be crucial for him, especially because he's losing part of his base to Poilievre. He's losing typical orange voters to Pierre Poilievre, and this is a crux issue for them. This and dental care were those two big pillars that he wanted out of this agreement. So if it comes back and it's not what the NDP want, if it's not what their base wants, that's a terrible look for him politically. It makes much more sense to take that stand, have that breakup moment now if you need to, and then move bill by bill. You don't have to call an election because you're doing poorly in the polls, but you do need to start showing that you're different and you have your own values.
So then the next part of this that I don't fully understand is this idea, and I think Jagmeet Singh said this today, I don't need to have the Liberals even necessarily account for this in their budget, i.e. how much this would cost Canadians.
Right.
What does that mean?
So this circles back to something that Mark Holland, the health minister, said on the weekend on CTV's Question Period. He was asked about it because right now we're talking about pharmacare, and we don't know exactly what it's going to look like. But if it was universal, single-payer pharmacare, like we have for healthcare, it would cost about $40 billion in 2027, $33 billion next year. That's a ton of money, and the feds have just said, we don't have that in the budget. We cannot pay that much money. But single-payer universal care has been a crux issue for Jagmeet Singh. And so the reason he's saying this is because he wants that legislative framework to be in there, to create an environment where this does have to come in sometime in the future, but it doesn't necessarily have to come in this budget.
Okay.
He's saying the Liberals are throwing up a financial smokescreen. Yes, it'll cost that much at some point, but we can do that money math down the road. We just need to see the framework that it will be introduced.
Okay, I will point out what I said before we came on. You didn't hear this, but I was watching some of the video of the meeting today between Jagmeet Singh and Justin Trudeau, and I had a sense in looking at Justin Trudeau's reactions, he just kept sitting there, and whenever Jagmeet Singh would look at him or talk about what he was asking for, he just politely nod as if, I know I have to do this, I know I have to sit here and smile, but I really don't want to hear this. What likelihood is there that the Liberals will in fact move forward this? How much pressure do they feel to get this done by March 1st?
Look, Mark Holland has said they're going to get something done by March 1st. Whether or not that happens, whether or not it's what the NDP wants, that's the big question mark. But the health minister says it's happening. That said, they said it was happening the last deadline, and it didn't.
Well, there you go.
We're on the second deadline now. From what I've heard from Liberal sources and from people on the Hill, is that right now they're just trying to stay in their lane. You know, the NDP can do their own thing. The Liberals are focused on their objectives, and I think that's a really interesting way to frame it, because we've seen that while pharmacare is something they have to get done, I wouldn't necessarily classify it as their objective. You know, that's something that they agreed to in this deal because it's the NDP, what they want. It's not necessarily the Liberal priority. So what this March 1st looks like is going to be really, really interesting. But to your point, the Liberals have been dragging their feet on this a little bit, and it's not necessarily a priority in the same way that it is for the NDP.
Let me ask you one last thing. We knew there was an update today coming from Chrystia Freeland. All I heard was her basically congratulating the government on having 31,000 jobs created in the last quarter when we had that unemployment number, the jobs report come out. Anything else come out of that today that you heard?
Yeah, a couple of new announcements. Well, one new announcement, one re-announcement. New today, we have 60-plus additional housing accelerator deals, all of them focused in rural communities, $176 million, 50,000 homes in 10 years, 5,300 over the next 3. That's a significant change in where that money's been going. Usually it's been big cities. You know,
right.
Yesterday they were in Ottawa, for example. Going to rural communities is actually pretty significant because more than just the money for homes themselves, that's money for municipal infrastructure. It's money for digital permitting processes, all these things that actually speed up the construction of future homes that maybe some of these communities of 1,000 people where there's 1 or 2 city clerks working on this don't have. So that's the new announcement. They also re-announced something that was in their 2022 budget but just started actually taking effect, and this was a 50% increase for student loan forgiveness for rural doctors and nurses. So if you're a doctor in a rural area, you can now get up to $60,000 in student loan forgiveness, $30,000 for nurses, and this ties into something they want to do in the fall, which is expand the definition of rural communities to be anybody who's in a city of fewer than 30,000 people. So this will help to some extent. You know, they're looking at potentially 1,200 additional doctors, 4,000 additional nurses on the high end by the end of all this in rural communities. But of course, there's much more in that healthcare field that's prohibiting doctors from staying in these communities than just the cost of their student loans.
Yeah, I'm just, as I hear you say this, the first thing I'm thinking of, we're in Quebec, is will the province necessarily here simply be able to look at this and go, yeah, thanks very much, but we'll come up with our own?
Well, so for some, this applies to federal loans, and so for some provinces, I believe Quebec is one of them, Nunavut certainly is, that don't have the same loan structure.
Right.
I believe they're just getting the cash. They're getting that money
to do as they want to do with it.
Hopefully be spent in healthcare.
Yeah, that's usually what happens. And hopefully they'll spend it in healthcare, as you said. Hey, thank you so much, Colton. Really appreciate it today.
Anytime.
Colton Prail, CTV Ottawa correspondent. That's what happened in the government today, and we'll see if there is, in fact, a pharmacare plan by March 1st or not. And if there isn't, what will Jagmeet Singh do?